Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Brian E. Roach and Zach Metkler.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast, an extra special version today. We are going to do our very first of what we hope to be weekly mock drafts leading up to the 2019 draft. And to kind of help us out doing that, we've got multiple people on the podcast today, which makes it very difficult to coordinate, but still lots of fun. So everybody, let's welcome back some folks you've heard consistently, some folks you may have heard last year and not since. But so on board, we've got the ever-popular professor of football joining us again, Zach Metkler. Zach, welcome.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
In addition, a sometimes guest on the podcast, contributor on SCU, Noah Freeman. Noah, welcome.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
And then one of the youngsters in the SCU back rooms, Chase is here with us. Chase, how are you today?
Good. How are you guys?
We're just dandy, man. It's all beautiful and lovely. And so this is the way this is going to work. We're going to do a Steelers only mock draft here tonight. And in the Steelers only mock draft, we're going to have an assumption. So our scenario is this. The scenario is that the Steelers have traded Antonio Brown to the Oakland Raiders in exchange for the 27th pick in the draft this year in 2019 and a future first rounder in 2020, which is great because we don't need to worry about that pick in this mock, but we will need to worry about the 27th. So as it stands right now, the Steelers will have the 20th and the 27th in the first round, the 20th in the second, the 19th, I think it is, in the third, and the 20th in the fourth. That is where I think we stand. Now, the rules are, if you've come up with a scenario that you think causes a trade to happen, whatever it may be, you certainly can throw that in. If not, we're going to say who we think we should pick at these spots, why they think they fit with the Steelers, and so on and so forth. You know, standard mock draft crap. So to get us going, it is now the first round. Steelers are on the clock with the 20th pick, and we will start off with the youngest member here. Chase, who you got at pick 20?
I got Noah Fant, tight end from Iowa. He's a threat who can get the ball, get the ball when it's in the air. He's probably gonna break some combine records just from some of the stuff I've seen, and Steelers have never really him in a long time, so I think that would be a great fit for Pittsburgh.
Noah Fant, a tight end. I mean, look, you're making Tina very happy. I'll tell you that much. Miss Tina Rivers, who is not with us tonight, but who is in our thoughts and our hearts always. She's in Iowa, so she's loving that pick, I'm sure. I'm going to hear from everybody else before you give okay, so Noah, what do you think?
Hopefully, at least from my opinion, Pittsburgh can address the cornerback situation a little early with a guy that they like. If not, I think they might go linebacker at either of the position if someone were to fall. But cornerback-wise, Byron Murphy, cornerback out of Washington, he's got good instincts, can close pretty well, smaller. He's pretty young, so that might be why he could fall down to the Steelers a little bit. Some people have him a lot higher, some people farther, but if not, Amani Oruwariye, the cornerback out of Penn State, not a bad ball hawk, needs to improve some tackling. He's a playmaker, but could be a good second pick if Byron Murphy is not there at number 20.
All right, so we've got a tight end, a cornerback, and now the professor. The professor gets to profess his pick at 20.
Yeah, I actually had the same thought process as Noah. I've been pretty harsh on the cornerbacks this year. I know some Twitter draft pundits are high on them, but I think Byron Murphy kind of fits the perception of what the Steelers typically go for in their rookie guys. He's a redshirt sophomore, check. He's a Power 5 prospect, check. He's an athletic guy with extremely high ceiling, check and check. I think that kind of marks off all the things that the Steelers kind of look for and his position of need. I think he's a guy that by the time his rookie contract's up, he could be what we had all hoped Artie Burns would be. And that's a pretty solid number one cornerback that can kind of fit into any scheme the Steelers try to employ.
All right, so I'm just going to chime in, and we're all going to just beat up on Chase because I have Byron Murphy as well. Everything that you guys said and agree with, I agree with. I also think he's a really smart guy. He's got when I look at the few highlights I have looked at, I just think that you can tell he's smart and smart about how he's playing, and I think that is something that is beneficial for certain. And he's a confident kid. It seems like to me, makes his decisions and sticks to him. So I also like Byron Murphy with the 20th. Now, Chase, you picked a tight end. What other than value? And we know you're a Panthers fan, so we kind of forgive you a little bit. But other than value, because I mean he's a well thought of tight end. Why do we need a tight end?
Well, I think the AB trade, you may need to get somebody else besides Juju and another weapon downfield. And I actually have a corner at 27, but I'll save that for a couple minutes. But I just think he's probably the best player available. And with losing AB, I think that would be a great pick just to add more weapons to Juju.
All right. Anybody else want to say anything about the tight end? Because I think there's no way in the world we pick a tight end in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you're looking at the two tight ends from Iowa, obviously, Hockey Lee, as I like to call him, is kind of the guy that's going to get stands. I like Fant. I don't necessarily like him in the first round. I'm not opposed to the tight end spot in the first round, but I think when you look at the other Steelers' needs that are pressing this year, I think people would be relatively upset just due to the fact that you still have Vance McDonald under contract. I think they end up bringing back Jesse James on a relatively friendly contract, and if you're going to draft a tight end to be your number 3 potentially, if he doesn't come out and wow anyone right away, then you're going to look at that as a busted pick when everyone thinks the window's closing. So I wouldn't go tight end first round, but I do like Noah Fant as a prospect.
What do you think, Noah? Any thoughts on a tight end?
The only way I would see that in the first round would be with our scenario at probably, because at 20th, I think we'd be able to find at least some sort of cornerback, linebacker, edge rusher, some sort of defensive help that we might need with some guy that Pittsburgh likes. Maybe just a few picks later, maybe none of the guys, none of the cornerbacks, linebackers, defensive backs, even going over to the offensive line or just receivers or anyone, maybe they're not there. So maybe someone like Fant or TJ would be able to come up. But yeah, I agree.
All right. And no, we're not picking on you, or not Noah, Chase. We're not really picking on you, but
yeah, no.
That brings us to 27. Okay. Because my 27 is going to probably be different than everybody else's 27. I'm going to go with this one. My 27 is the Indianapolis Colts trade me a pick in the second round for the 27th pick, as well as a future second round pick. And I take it because I just like next year's draft better. So I don't have one.
I don't mind that.
And that's my gig. That's my gig right there. Now we'll start with Chase. Chase, what do you got? 27, since you have a corner now.
I got Amani Aruarie from Penn State. He's a long zone press corner that has good ball skills and has made plays for Penn State. Like Noah said, he's not a great tackler, but I think with his length, and he's a pretty good athlete, so he can match up against bigger or smaller receivers. I think that'd be a great fit across from Joe Hayden and Mike Hilton in the slot.
All right, Noah.
I've got a pick that probably, or at least has a better chance of possibly not falling, but I got Devin White just to get some sort of linebacker help out of Alabama. Woo. And it's a possibility that he could fall if Cincinnati doesn't draft him, which is where at least a lot of people are putting him as of now. But if the cornerbacks, I'm going to keep going. If he's not there, if cornerbacks, linebackers aren't there, like I said a little earlier, maybe they start to go with what Chase started to allude to. If with AB going away, Pittsburgh usually drafts a tight end, or a receiver anyway. So maybe with you go with that kind of tight end depth, or you can go to someone like AJ Brown out of Ole Miss as a receiver. But really, I kind of went receiver there. I think they would go linebacker. But out of all the receivers, there's a bunch of them that you could probably pick, not necessarily just one of them. But those are my thoughts.
All right. And you said Alabama. I think Devin White's LSU, you know?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Professor.
Yeah, I'm going with a guy here that hasn't got as much talk about as you would expect. And I don't know if I don't think he'd be there this late. And if he is, I think the Steelers would be foolish to pass on him. But Brian Burns, edge rusher out of FSU. Everyone's kind of complained about Bud Dupree. I still think Bud Dupree has a place on this roster, not for $9 million, but that's a different podcast. I think realistically, though, his biggest complaint has been his inability to get a lot of bend and flexibility off the edge, and I think that's kind of where Brian Burns shines. You know, he's kind of a questionable run defender at this point due to his frame, but the one thing he does well is rush the passer. And compared to where Bud Dupree was when he came out, his pass rush toolbox is out of this world. He has the ability to kind of make moves inside or outside on the edge. He's going to constantly be going, has a high motor, high flexibility, good bend. I think he has a chance to, in year one, with Bud Dupree kind of being in flux with his long-term situation, could really come in and be a nice pass rushing specialist while he adds some weight to his kind of long, lean frame. And by year two, depending on how everything goes with Bud, he could ultimately be the pass rusher on the opposite side of T.J. Watt and could give the Steelers kind of their own Melvin Ingram, Joey Bosa type pass rushing duo, or Von Miller, Bradley Chubb. Which I think would be a really kind of exciting prospect. I think Brian Burns does not get the credit he deserves when it comes to his pass rushing pros. And I think he's one of the more polished pass rushers that we've seen in recent memory.
Okay. So, I mean, anybody have anything to say about anybody else's picks? Zach, I know you like the guy out of Penn State, and so do I, that Chase has us taking. Although I think that the first may be high for him in my mind. Based on what you just said, I'm going to have to look at Brian Burns. Besides, his name is Brian. How can I not like him?
Exactly.
And I agree with what you said. No, I don't know that Devin White's going to last this long. And if he did, I guess maybe I'd be more inclined to be willing to take him at 27. But I'm just not in love with him. Zach and I have talked a lot offline, and I think we even talked about it in the last podcast we did about AB. It's just a size issue. I just don't know. But there's no question that you need linebacker help. Anybody have anything else to say about any of these particular picks?
Yeah, I'll say I do like Devin White at 27 more than I like him earlier on. I know he's getting a lot of hype around the interwebs regarding his ability and stands kind of as the number one linebacker. I'm not buying into the hype as much. Personally, Mack Wilson's my number one linebacker this year, but I just think at 27, it's worth the risk, especially with a second first rounder, because he does have a high ceiling. I just don't trust the instincts. I don't trust the angles, and I don't trust his ability to kind of filter through all the traffic whenever he's trying to pursue the ball. And for me, he's not athletic enough to overcome some of those deficiencies at this point. And if he can get the instincts, he could be kind of like a Deion Jones type linebacker. I'm just not holding my breath at this point, but I think 27 is a good value if he were to fall that far.
And I should have asked this when I said it. If Indianapolis does pop up and said, look, we're going to give you the second pick in the second round, which they have, and a second rounder next year for your 27, do you guys take it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm all for accumulating picks next year. I know we've talked about in 2020, I think it's a much stronger class and have much better value for guys that the Steelers would need.
Absolutely. Now, at this point, if I make that deal, we've got 2 first rounders next year and now 2 second rounders next year, and I'm liking that. Okay, but since I didn't pick at 27, I get to pick in the second round here first at number 2, and in my little scenario, this is where I grab the receiver, and the receiver that I grab is DK Metcalf out of Ole Miss, who I don't believe will be there, but could be there high in the second round, depending on how the board falls. And when I did this, one of the 97 mocks I did while I was actually supposed to be working today, he was there. So I went with that. So I like him. Look, if they get rid of AB, I think they're going to need to draft a receiver. But I don't know that they need to draft him in the first round. And as opposed to drafting, later in the round and hoping that we uncover a diamond, I like Metcalf. I don't know that he's the number 1 receiver in this draft, but he's high up there for me. So that's what I did with my pick 2 in the second round. Anybody have any complaints with that?
No, sir. I like it. Like the concept.
All right, good. Then we'll go to 20. And we'll start at 20. No, you haven't gone first yet. So 20th pick in the second round. Who you got?
Yeah, so hopefully, at least with my scenario, they find help on the defense in the first round. Players fall like they're supposed to. So I had 2 defensive picks at the beginning, and with the hole that AB is leaving, not necessarily just to try and produce like him, but we need at least another receiver. And like I mentioned previously, Pittsburgh usually drafts receivers, even if it seems like we have 7 or 8 receivers on the team. So I think the second round is a more realistic option for drafting a wide receiver. So I had, and like I said earlier, and like you've had a bunch of different receivers, I think we might cover like 5 or 6 of them throughout this draft. But I had DeMarcus Lodge out of Ole Miss. He's got some speed. He creates separation for big catches. He can release really well. If he isn't there, I also liked Paris Campbell out of Ohio State.
Go Bucks.
A guy that might be a little early for some people, but I got to watch him play. He's got some. He gets receptions, he gets yards, he gets touchdowns. He's a pretty good overall receiver, and I think he can start to do some damage.
Nice. I don't hate that. If I hadn't already picked a receiver, that would have worked for me. All right, Chase, what do you got?
I got a linebacker, Voshon Joseph from Florida.
You stink. Stealing my pick, man.
He's probably my second or third linebacker in this class. He's not getting near as enough buzz as he should be. He's downhill, aggressive, big hitter, and he reminds me a lot of Ryan Shane's. I know that's going to be kind of a hot take, but that's who I see when I see him play.
All right, as you'll find out very shortly, I have no complaints with that pick. All right, Zach.
Yeah, I took a similar approach to Noah on this one. This is more so of a dream scenario because I think as this draft process goes along, my player is going to kind of see his stock go up. But Kelvin Harmon out of NC State, I think if in the scenario that we're portraying where AB gets traded, I think Kelvin Harmon's kind of like your prototypical X receiver. He's not going to have like the elite speed, although he is quick and he gets off presses and man coverage really well. But he has nice length at 6'3", he's 213. The size is there, the production's there. I think his best football is still ahead of him. And I think if you plug him into that X spot over time, it allows, potentially James Washington to develop as the Z, which we're hoping to see him do. And that really kind of allows Juju to have the flexibility to either play on the perimeter in some sets or be the oversized slot guy that we've see him have the ability to be. So I think kind of having Harmon build into that aspect would be a really nice piece to the Steelers. And, he's AB is an all-world talent, great, one of the greatest receivers of all time. But Harmon is that standard prototypical X receiver that you see in the NFL today, and would be a nice difference in size, especially in the red zone, which isn't everything because AB's produced in that area. But I like Harmon's upside, and I think, by the time he is in year 2, year 3, you can start seeing some high-level production. I don't know if he'll ever be like a Julio Jones or DeAndre Hopkins type player because the speed's just not there. But I think he has the potential to be a very quick starting wide receiver in the NFL. I think there's no way he escapes the second round.
Yeah, I don't hate that either. I think it'll come as nobody to surprise no one that my pick was Voshon Joseph. Look, Zach and I were talking about this earlier in chat, and the more I watch of this kid, the more I am absolutely on the Joseph bandwagon. As Zachadonia would say. I'm a member of the Voshon Hive. I'm going to start that right now. The kid plays at 100,000 miles an hour all the time. He looks like he processes quickly. He makes good decisions. He looks like he has decent instincts and intelligence. I really like what I've seen of this kid so far. And if he doesn't start to climb boards the way Van Der Esch did last year, and get more notoriety, or if he blows it up at the combine, he'll never be there for us at 20 in the second. But right now he is, and I'm thrilled. So I would have grabbed him too. So that addresses the second round with no other big surprises. Then we get to the third. In the third, we're at pick 19. And, because my pick may be ridiculed because it's a total homer pick for a Buckeye fan. And just because I want to pick Mike Weber, I picked Mike Weber. I said I want a running back. And look, here's the thing. I think the Steelers need to get away from worrying about star, the elite running back. And it's been proved that they can, you can win with a running back by committee, and I think Weber works in a running back by committee. So if you have Connor and Weber and Samuels, I think that works more so than if you had to depend on Weber completely. So I kind of like him fitting into that group. That's why I grabbed him. Plus, he's a Buckeye, and I always have to grab a Buckeye. With that being said, let's move to Noah.
Ramon Foster, he's going to be a free agent. Pittsburgh hasn't drafted a lineman this high since David DeCastro with the 24th overall pick in 2012. Pittsburgh now is starting to have a veteran line, so I could see them start to trying to find some replacements for them soon, at least trying to go up through the system, start to become backups, and then work their way into it. So I'm going to go with Bo Benchuel, guard out of Wisconsin. He's good at feeling the pressure, which could help Ben right away if someone were to get injured, which is a good possibility, a really good anchor ability. He gets to move people. If he's not there, I also liked Chris Lindstrom, a guard out of Boston College, but I think he might be taken by then. He's kind of moving up and down on some boards.
Zach and I are never going to fight with anybody who picks an offensive lineman.
Especially Wisconsin offensive lineman.
Yeah, absolutely never going to happen. All right, Chase, who do you got here in the third?
I have O'Shane Zaminis, edge from Old Dominion. He's got an advanced technique as a pass rusher and has a lot of variety of moves to get to the quarterback. He doesn't have elite bend or athleticism, but I think he's just an overall just solid pass rusher that fits. And he terrorized my Hokies, so.
There you go. I don't know anything about him, so I can't make any comment, but I can't argue that we could certainly use an edge rusher. I don't think Zach's going to argue that or Noah's going to argue that since Zach took one already. But let's get Zach's third-round pick.
Yeah, so the guy I'm picking here probably is a little bit too early for him. I'm really kind of struggling to gauge where he's going to end up going. I think this pre-draft process will be important for him, but he kind of fits the profile of what I think the Steelers could use on that defense. Going with Joe Giles-Harris out of Duke, inside linebacker. I think he projects really well as a three-down linebacker. He doesn't have elite speed, but he's not a liability in that area either. He's been a leader for that Duke defense. He was an all-ACC linebacker 2 years in a row. I thought he was probably, in my opinion, with all the top defenders we see in the ACC, I thought he should have been in the conversation for one of them, and he's never got that love. He had 232 career tackles over his time at Duke. I think he's very good in coverage. He's very good against the run. I don't know why he's not getting the love he's getting. I know there's kind of some issues with his ability to kind of get through some of the nonsense because he is a bigger guy. He's 6'2", 245. But that's never seemed like a liability. I think with the proper coaching and whatnot, he could be a very good three-down linebacker for the Steelers. And I think his stock has the ability to rise, but I think he's going to be sitting there around the third. I think he might even fall to the fourth, push comes to shove. But as I said to you, Brian, before, after Devin White and Mac Wilson, there's kind of a lot of fluctuating between the linebackers. I think it's going to come down to preference. And I think if he does enough, the Steelers would be hard-pressed to at least not consider him if they haven't taken a linebacker at that point in the draft.
And I don't think I hate that. And I don't. Again, I haven't paid enough attention yet, and I'll have to look at some of these guys. But I respect the professor's opinion enough not to argue with him about this that much. Anybody have any quibbles with our third round of selections?
I like I'm terrible at his name. The guard from Wisconsin. I'm not good with those types of names. I got the opportunity to watch him doing some Pro Football Focus work, and he is very good as a run blocker. I question his ability as a pass blocker. Not that Ramon Foster's ever been elite in that area, but I think he would offer kind of a similar aspect to that. But I'd have some concerns with his ability as a pass blocker. Excuse me, and he hasn't always shown in that area. And I don't know if it's just due to the fact that Wisconsin's not exactly known for their, pass blocking. And so they don't really promote that as much. And, I'd love to see what's the offensive line can do to kind of develop his talent if it came to that point. But I've been openly, as Chase found out today, I'm not that high on this year's offensive line class. And, I wouldn't be opposed to taking a lineman. I just wouldn't be jumping up and down for joy for any of the guys in this year's class.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% in what you just said. But as we enter the fourth round, I'm gonna say that my board looked blank, and I didn't want any more wide receivers, and I didn't want another running back, and I didn't want to reach too heavily in the fourth round. So at the 20th pick in the fourth, I took Drew Samia. I don't know how to say his name. I can't pronounce anybody's name. I took some guard out of Oklahoma. And, I won't even pretend that I knew anything about him when I saw his name on the board. I said, you know what? Fourth round, offensive line. It feels like a tradition around here. So I went with it. And he was the highest ranked O-lineman left on the board when I was looking. I'll let Zach tell me if he's any good, because I don't know.
Honestly, don't know a whole lot about him. I haven't got the chance to watch a whole lot on him, so I can't really give you my accurate take on that, if I'm being honest.
Well, very good.
He's a little undersized, but
yes,
he's very talented.
So that was my fourth. And Chase, since you were talking, you go now with your fourth round pick.
All right, so we all went wide receivers at some point, but I took Stanley Morgan Jr. out of Nebraska. He's one of the better route runners in this class and has shown the ability to separate consistently against Big Ten corners, and he's good in contested areas, and he can have the ability to play outside or in the slot, and he's been pretty productive even without a really good quarterback in Nebraska all 4 years. So
I can't argue that there's going to be a wide receiver need, and you assume they're going to take one. So, Chase, or not? That was Chase. Noah.
My fourth round pick for no other reason than to root for the underdog. So John Kaminsky, defensive end, edge rusher from the University of Charleston. Why not root for a Division II prospect, the NFL draft? Even our own Zachadonia advocated for him in our back channels and everything. So let's get another guy kind of like Javon Hargrave, just coming out from those lower level schools and seeing what they can do.
I actually like that kid too. I don't hate that pick at all. I don't know whether, every year there's a guy, and Zach, you remember this from last year. Every year there's a guy from a small school who I would like to grab later in the draft, and they always go anymore. They're always going higher. There are no more secrets, and they always go higher than I anticipate them. So maybe the fourth round is about right for that guy. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. As these scouting departments develop and get more staff, and they're seeing more of these small school guys, it's becoming increasingly harder to hide them, so to speak. And there's so many more opportunities for these showcase games. They're doing these pro days, and they're traveling to other schools to get more exposure. So these teams are doing a lot more of their due diligence to seek out these prospects. And I think a guy like Kaminsky getting an invite to the Senior Bowl, like he is next week. He has an opportunity for him to shine up the big boys, and if he goes and shows up, I mean, it doesn't matter. He went to Charleston. He's going to shoot up boards everywhere, and he's going to end up being a guy that could be a multi-fronted guy. I like it more as a 3-4 edge, like what the Steelers would employ with T.J. Watt and Bud Dupree. But normally any other year, like 10 years ago, he'd be a 6th, 7th rounder, maybe undrafted. Now we're picking him here in the 4th. He could be in the 3rd, but he could still also fall to 6th. It's hard to say with these guys, but if you like him enough, take him. And I think if that's the case with the Steelers and Kaminsky, you got to take him in the 4th if he's there.
Cool. All right. So that we will end the 4th round with the professor. Who did you have?
So there's another guy I had the opportunity to watch a lot during my time with Pro Football Focus, and he's a tight end. I'll preface with that. I'm not saying it's a huge need, but I think he offers a lot more as a receiver than Jesse James does. I think with that regard, it would be exciting to see him as kind of a guy out there in a 2 tight end set or even a 3 tight end set, depending on how that would all transpire. You could put him out wide because he does have a really good wide receiver stance. But that would be Josh Oliver out of San Jose State. Kind of an under the radar prospect, which is why I like him. He has nice size. He has decent speed. He's not going to wow you as a route runner. He's not going to wow you as a guy that, is going to blow the top off the defense. But he has that type of NFL feel of a modern day tight end, what you'd want to see in him. I think because the Steelers are a little bit deeper at tight end with the fact that they don't need him to play right away, it would be beneficial for him to kind of get some time in to ease his way into a potential year 2 tight end 2 spot if it came to that. Again, he's another guy that's going to the Senior Bowl. And I think that if he does well enough there, his stock can increase. I think the 4th round as it stands might be a little bit high for him. But I think he's a guy that, even though he's not a huge blocker, is going to give you a lot as a vertical receiver, which would be, I think, a nice little twist there, especially to alleviate the loss of Antonio Brown in this scenario.
Yeah, I don't hate this at all. I like this guy as well. And the other thing is because we don't currently have a 5th round pick, the Steelers do not have a 5th round pick this year, at least as it stands right now. If there's a guy that they like in the 5th and there's nobody specifically that they like any better on their board at this time, then they may have to go, a little deeper into what they have, because he's not going to be there in the 6th when they get back on the board. So I really don't have a problem with this at all. Look, I think it's based on the scenario, which of course, as I said at the top of the episode here, is that Antonio Brown's been traded to the Raiders for a 1st round pick, the 27th. And for everybody out there who's yelling and screaming, saying we undercut our own team or whatever, they're not going to get the number 4 pick for Antonio Brown. It's just not gonna happen. It might have happened before Mike Mayock was there, but not after Mike Mayock was hired. So let's not travel down that path too heavily, because it's not going to happen. There were some reasonable arguments made in our podcast, Zach, about the draft that the Raiders may not be the best fit, but I like them because they have the best capital of anybody else in the league, I think, that the Steelers could want to deal with. Doesn't mean that's how it's going to work, but that's the scenario I painted for this particular mock. And, it's clear with AB being gone, everybody picked a wide receiver at some point. We all know that corner is an issue. We all know that linebackers are positions that we need to look at. If the thing, and I guess we'll just go around one last time here and get everybody's thoughts about what you really think at the beginning of this draft season, as we're just starting now. What do you actually think the expectations are for the Steelers, and where do you think they're going to look in the first 2-3 rounds? Chase, we'll start with you.
I mean, I think you have to look at linebacker and corner. Honestly, the corner class is pretty deep this year. The linebacker class, not so much. But like you said with Voshan, he has a potential to rise a lot over the process in the next couple of months. So I think he could potentially be a guy in the 1st round. And REA from Penn State is another guy I like. So I think you definitely have to look at those 2 spots in the first couple rounds.
Yeah. Noah, what do you think?
It's going to be a popular pick again, too, more cornerback and then linebacker kind of thing, just because even if our cornerback depth has slightly gotten better every year, that doesn't necessarily mean it's ready to go yet. And we've just been going through so many different cornerbacks. I think they just need to try and find that one guy at least that's going to stay there and stick. So definitely cornerback as a priority.
Yeah. Zach?
So this is going to be an unpopular opinion. I know obviously cornerback and inside linebacker are, when you look at the roster, the two biggest needs. But this year, more so than any, they can't afford to reach. I think it's me. Obviously, I'm not a paid professional scout, and the teams know better than I do. But to me, there's not a whole lot of elite talent at cornerback or linebacker. Now, there's going to be guys that come out and they end up being, very solid rookies, or guys that we didn't see coming. So I'm not saying that this is completely worthless class. I just think there's so many guys that are question marks. I wouldn't be surprised to see if they try to go edge rusher or take a position that no one sees coming, and we'll have to deal with the same kind of Yinzer reaction of, fire Colbert. They have no idea how to draft, blah, 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 even if the guy turns into a Pro Bowl as a rookie. So I personally am hoping for a cornerback and linebacker if the right guy falls to them. I'm just not really sold on a lot of the talent, especially in the first round of this draft class. And again, unpopular opinion, probably get some slack for it. I just think that there's going to be more edge rushers there that are going to be a much better value that might not be the biggest need right now that will pay dividends down the road.
Yeah, I can't actually argue with you. My take on this draft is that you should try and get as much as you can for next year's draft. I've been saying it repeatedly. That's the way I look at this draft. I agree. I don't see, look, the top 15 guys that are going to go in this draft are going to be good, solid guys, but that's not where we're going to be going. And in the likelihood that any of those guys is going to fall far enough for us to take a stab at them is unlikely. But even with those top 15, I don't see a corner in this draft that, you're like, that's the guy. That is without doubt the best corner in this draft, and you got to get him, and he's going to be an all-pro, and he's going to be able to lock that position down for years to come. I just don't see that guy. It doesn't mean that they're not any good. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't be an upgrade over what the Steelers currently have, but I just feel like it's a draft class that is not as strong as some of the drafts we've seen recently. And because of that, I think it's really, really important, just like you said, Zach, to not reach. And if there was ever a draft where you took best player available, this is the draft. And if there's ever a draft when you have the chance to move back, this is the draft. And see if you can accrue some capital for 2020, because I think you're gonna make hay then that you're not going to be able to make now. And that's in my mind the biggest tragedy about Antonio Brown's situation and where we stand is that probably it would have been much nicer if this all transpired at the end of next year. Where they could trade him for 2020 picks. So I think that the needs are there. We know what the weaknesses on the team are and where they need to go. But because of the way this draft falls, I think any position could be conceivably one that gets picked, just depending on who's available and who's on the board. I would prefer a corner, just like you guys. I would prefer an inside linebacker somewhere in the draft. Just like Chase said, I really am excited about Voshon Joseph. I hope that he's on their board and he's somewhere around and available at a value pick for them, but we'll have to wait and see. So this is we're going to shut this one down. If you guys want to give a shout out, tell us how we can follow you. For those of you who don't know how to follow any of these guys on Twitter or out there in the interwebs, Chase, how can folks pay attention to you?
My Twitter is at capital CH, capital D, with a capital S, and that's how you can follow me and find out some stuff on some prospect you haven't heard of.
All right, Noah, what about you? Tell the folks how they can stalk you on the interwebs.
Noah_Freeman12 is my Twitter stuff.
Excellent. And Zach, for all the trolls who are currently chasing you down, how can they see you and find you?
You can follow me at GZ Sports, SPORTS_ZM. I look forward to getting a bunch of hate mail this week. Appreciate it.
And for me, it's at Cannons Don't Thun. You can get me there on Twitter. Remember to hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed the podcast. Get the bell on. so you can get notified, because this is the first of many of these mock drafts that we're going to try and do. And I promise you, if you haven't followed us on the website, every year I do a series called Mock Draft Insanity, where we just lose our freaking minds and paint scenarios that in no way have a chance to occur, but are fun to speculate about. And one way or another, one of those scenarios will blend into one of these mocks, which should be interesting. So, and we'll try and be back again in a week's time, give or take. We may have an additional guest. We may not. We'll have to see. And until then, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for this version of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name's Brian. Their names are Chase, Noah, and Zach. And like we always say, it's chaos out there, so be kind.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.